Hey guys, my name is David O'Connor, and I'm going to be going over a presentation on how to throw a bait caster the correct way. Now, I want to start off by explaining that there's more than one type of reel out there. In fact, I had these two just in my apartment. The one on the right is an open face or spinning reel, which is pretty simple, pretty straightforward stuff, easy to use, and very, very common. Now, the one on the left is also very common in the bass fishing world, and it is a bait caster. And it's a lot more complex than that spinning reel, but when it's used right, it's a lot of fun. Now, your first step, you need to look at your rod tip. Make sure your line isn't wrapped around it, because if you go to cast and you got that line all wonky on the end of your rod tip, you're going to end up with a backlash or a bird's nest. And I'll go into that more later, but they are no fun to deal with. Your second step, you better check your drag. And I got a story about that will let you know just how important your drag really is. There's one day I was fishing with my buddies, and I hooked into a bass, and I thought it was a big old 6-pound largemouth or something crazy, because it just started pulling line like crazy, and ended up as a little 1/2-pound bass. And it got off because I did not have my drag set, and it was just pulling line like it was nothing, because there was no tension holding that line onto the reel. Now, step 3, you're going to want to adjust your tension knob. And that's what those arrows are pointing to right there. That is going to control the speed that your spool will spin during the cast. So you want to adjust that tension knob just enough to where your spool is not spinning at a faster rate than your line is going out, because you will end up with a bird's nest, like I said earlier. Now, next, you're going to want to push down the thumb bar right there right behind the spool on the reel. That's going to let the spool loose. It's going to unlock it so that the spool can then freely spin, allowing you to make your casts. Now, right after you click the thumb bar down, you need to put your thumb on the spool itself, because like I said, that spool is now unlocked and you don't want your line to just fall at your feet. So that's why you put your thumb on there. And I got another story to tell you about this. Now, my dad, he's the one that taught me how to throw a bait caster. When I was young, I used to try and throw them all the time by myself out in the yard. And this step right here is what I was missing the entire time. I probably would have picked it up on my own if it wasn't for this step. I would click that thumb bar down and not be paying attention. The next thing I know, my lure is at my feet, and now I can't make a cast. I got to reel it all back together and try again. Well, my dad, he's been fishing all his life. And he just told me that trick right there. And that's how I learned to throw the bait caster. Now, step 6, you're going to make your casting motion. And when you're making that motion, once your rod tip is at the top point that it can be, you're going to release your thumb so that your bait goes flying out there. And the last step, step 7, once your bait hits the water, you can just turn your handle there just a click, and it'll lock the spool back in place. That thumb bar will reset on its own. Now, after that, you're going to want to check for your backlash like I've been talking about. You see right there in that picture to the right, my line is a little loose on the spool, and that it's just going to lead to issues. You go to cast again, and the line if it's not straight on that spool, you're not going to have a good cast. Now, guys, fishing with the bait caster is one of the most fun things you can do on the water, in my opinion. And once you learn to use it right with these steps that I've gone over, you'll just have a blast. Now all you got to do is find the fish. And I found that fish right there. I'm proud of that fish. As always, if you have any questions, just reach out to me at dmoconnor42@tntech.edu. Thank you, guys.